Welcome in, everybody. My name is Jesse Pelletier. This is my 2022 In The Bag. So I'm going to take you through all the discs that I'm throwing to start off the 2022 season. I'll start with my putting putters, then talk about the rest of my putt and approach discs, and then mid-ranges, fairway drivers, distance drivers. Something that you'll notice about my bag that I did last year as well is every disc in my bag is made by a different manufacturer. This is something I like to do just to explore all the different manufacturers that are out there. Every year, a whole bunch of new manufacturers enter the scene and make some pretty great stuff. So as you go through, hopefully I'll show you some discs that you yourselves want to try. And if you do, let me know how they fly for you in the comments. So my putting putters, I'm putting with the Discraft Fierce. This blue stamped one, is the one that is typically my Circle 1 putter, or the putter that I use for any of my traditional putts. It's really shallow and pretty stiff out of the box, both of which I really like in a putter. For me, it's just super straight, especially at 30 feet and in. Once I get out to Circle 2, 30 to 60 feet, it is going to hyzer a little bit by the time it gets to the basket, but any putter I think is going to hyzer at that distance. So for me, Circle 1, 30 feet and in, this thing is just point and shoot, aim at the pole, hit the pole. So yeah, really like this as an understable putting putter. This one, I don't usually putt with this. This one is slightly less beat up than my primary putting putter. So this, I'll usually be throwing this for approach shots or understable shorter tee shots, like 200 to slightly over 200 feet. If I want that understable flight, then this is what I'll be throwing off the tee. Or for approach shots like 80 to 100 feet, where I'm trying to maybe make a run at making it in the basket, then this is the putter that I'll reach for that type of shot. My most overstable approach disc. I'll be talking about the rest of my discs in order of most stable to least stable, just with the exception of talking about my putting putters first, which are my least stable putters. So my most overstable putt and approach disc is this AGL Discs Baobab. This thing is just an absolute wheel or manhole cover. It is just a vertical wall on the rim and then flat as a board. So super, super, super overstable. The most overstable approach disc I've ever thrown. Typically, when I'm throwing this, it's when I'm scrambling and I'm in the woods, and my most comfortable release is this high forehand anhyzer release. And if that's my best option is to go that route, and I want the disc to finish moving left to right, then I'll throw this because it's so overstable that I can release it on that kind of high anhyzer flick release, and it'll fight all the way out of it and finish moving left to right. So in Tucson, where it's not super wooded, this is a disc that I throw very, very rarely. But when I travel and get to play woods courses, I tend to throw this a few times every round. So super overstable, very cool disc. Also for rollers, because it is just kind of a wheel, you can throw this for a roller and it'll go straight for a really long time. And for overhand shots, what I've seen is that if you release it vertical, it'll hold that angle all the way until it hits the ground, and then will continue rolling. Most discs will start to pan out, and if they're understable enough, they'll actually leaf, as I call it, and they'll kind of swing like that. This thing's just vertical the whole time. So you can do some really freaky things with this. If that sounds like the type of shot that you need, then this is the disc for you. My next most overstable approach disc is this A1, made by Prodigy Discs in their 400 plastic. Out of the box, this thing was incredibly overstable. It was hard to throw more than 200 feet. Now that I've had it in the bag for a couple years, it's at the point where if I throw this hard and flat on a forehand, it will turn a little bit, which fresh A1s very rarely do. But then that fade kicks in and fights back. So usually when I'm throwing this, it's off the tee for a forehand shot of maybe 200 to 250 feet. I rarely throw this backhand, but if I need a 200-foot right to left moving shot, then I'll throw this on backhand, and it is very reliably overstable. If there are severe headwinds, I might throw this backhand, but for the most part, this is going to be a power forehand shot that I need to go left to right, or if I'm pretty close to the basket and need to do an overhand shot that kind of holds that pan angle the whole way, then I'll throw this for shorter distance tomahawks as well. My straight to slightly overstable putter is this Viking Discs Rune. This is in their Storm plastic. This disc, like I said, backhands, I'll throw this hard and flat, and it'll go straight for a long time and then just have the slightest bit of fade at the end with no turn, which is a very, very useful shot to have. This disc in particular is very domey, which I don't usually like for throwing putters, but the flight is just so good that I can't take it out of the bag and replace it with something else. Holds straight for a long time with no turn, just a little bit of fade. The fade is small enough that usually it's, even though it's fading, it's landing flat and it's not landing on an angle like this. So usually in grass, it would just settle flat. Out here in Tucson in the desert, it does tend to slide a little bit in the sand, but that's okay. It's definitely better than having something kind of come down like this and then have a risk of skipping. And this doesn't really skip at all. This kind of slides. So awesome disc. I don't throw this forehand at all. It does not handle the torque very well, but for backhands, dead straight, that's the shot I'm throwing it for. And then my slightly understable throwing putter is this Streamline Discs Pilot in Electron Soft Plastic. A little bit of a puddle top here. Usually I'm not a huge fan of that, but again, it's one of those cases where the flight is good enough that I'll suck it up and deal with that slight puddle top. If I throw this hard and flat, it'll turn and probably not fight out of that until it hits the ground, but it doesn't have a lot of side-to-side distance over that turn. So it's just turning very, very gently and finishing flat. Sometimes discs that are really understable they'll cover a lot more side-to-side distance than a disc like this will. So for the most part, this is just a straight shooter. If I truly want it to just be dead straight, I'll put a little bit of hyzer on it. It'll flip to flat, just go straight the whole way and finish straight. So this is like your cornerstone straight putter shot that everyone needs in their bag. And this is what I'm doing it with. So that's all. Ooh, it's not all my putters. I have one more. This is a Castoplast Berg. This was sent to me from my buddy Joe Lucier. We did a disc swap, and he always loved this disc and knew that I'd wanted to try one, so he sent me this. The Berg's extremely unique. It's very slow. You can see there that it's very blunt with that rounded nose. This is a disc that for backhands, if I throw this thing as hard as I can, I get like 200 feet out of it. It's just really does not want to fly. In Joe's words, it flies like a pork tenderloin, and it's hard to disagree after you've thrown one and see the flight for yourself. It is slightly overstable. I would say slightly more overstable than the Rune that I was talking about earlier, but definitely doesn't get as much distance. For forehands, I can actually throw this on forehands and put a little bit of hyzer on it. It'll flip to flat and just kind of go dead straight and finish straight, which is very, very rare. I've never thrown another disc of any speed or anything that I can throw on a forehand. It really doesn't turn that much and just finishes straight with no fade. So super, super useful disc to have in the bag. Probably my go-to approach disc between 100 and 175 feet or so. In this K1 soft plastic from Castoplast, it does tend to just land flat and maybe slide a little, but overall very little ground play, which is awesome for an approach disc. So, Joe, you nailed this one. This disc is awesome. It's a staple in my bag for sure. All right, let's talk about mid-ranges. I only have 4. My most overstable one is this Mint Discs Bobcat. I actually used to have a green one, and I just lost it at the fort, but fortunately I had this in my backups, so I'm bagging this now. Usually when I'm throwing this, it's for a forehand shot that I either want a flex forehand shot, in which case I'll throw this hard and flat, and I'll get a little bit of turn out of it, and then know that it's going to fight back. Or if I just want a straight to fade forehand shot that needs a little more distance than I can get with the A1, then I'll reach for the Bobcat, throw it forehand. It's very flat, which is very nice for forehands, and it also feels incredible in the backhand grip as well. Just maybe the nicest feeling mid-range I've honestly ever held. I do throw this backhand as well, so if I need a shot that's 250 to 275 and I need it to go right to left, I'll throw this hard and flat on a backhand. I know it's not going to turn, and it's going to have pretty good fade. Rather than being a disc that is straight for a long way and then the fade kind of kicks in all at once, it's more of a gradual fade, so it's just kind of slowly fading for the entire flight rather than kicking all at once. I don't know that I prefer that to a disc that's straight to dump, but it's just different. So yeah, awesome workhorse of a mid-range for me. Possibly my favorite mold of all time. So the unfortunate part of that is Mint has not made Bobcats in this plastic for quite a while, so if I lose this one, I don't know when I'm going to be able to replace it, but I will be looking to replace it rather than trying to find another disc that flies like this, because this disc is just so good. All right, my slightly stable or straight to slightly overstable mid-range is this MVP Reactor. It's got the Jordan Castro Smashstro stamp on there. A newer disc. This came out maybe 12 to 18 months ago, and people are raving about it, and I totally get it. This thing is... Usually I'm throwing this on backhands. I've tried experimenting with forehands a little bit. It seems like it can handle the forehand torque, but really haven't thrown it enough to say for sure, and I've never put like full power behind this on a forehand, so really this is just a backhand disc for me when I need a disc that I know is not going to turn, but I don't want a ton of fade either. Really, I'll throw this hard and flat, no turn, and it will fade at the end, but not crazy fade, which is awesome to see a disc that's stable enough to not turn, but I still get a lot of distance out of it. Also, just feels amazing in the hand. This is very quickly becoming one of my favorite discs in the bag for sure. All right. And then my straight to understable mid-range is this Legacy Discs Gauge. So this, I'm only throwing this backhand. When I throw it backhand flat, it will tend to turn a little bit and finish straight, kind of just like a longer pilot. But it's very workable. So if I throw it with a good amount of hyzer, it'll flip a little bit and then just kind of ride that slight angle the whole way. Or if I need it to just be dead straight, I can put a little bit of hyzer on it. It'll flip to flat, go straight the whole way, and then finish straight. So it really is like a longer pilot for me. This thing is just, it's that straight mid-range that everybody needs in their bag, and this absolutely nails it for me from Legacy Discs. So awesome. And then my understable mid-range is this Discmania Origin from their Evolution line in the Neo plastic. This was dyed by my friend Joe Lucier and I to this purple. It was originally white. And yeah, this disc, if I throw it flat, it'll turn, and it's not going to roll, but it's definitely going to turn and not fight out of it. I don't throw this forehand. This is backhand only. Usually when I'm throwing this, it's for a shot that I want to throw hyzer because that's just my most comfortable release point personally. But I want it to flip and maybe have a little turn as well, but mostly just be a straight shot. Usually if I have a straight shot that I'm trying to throw, I often reach for this over the gauge, even though this is straighter. My natural preferred release point is just a little bit of hyzer, so I prefer to take this, put it on that little hyzer, and flip it up and flat. However, if I'm trying to throw a straight shot and the preferable miss is to the left, then I'll throw the gauge because I know it's not going to really turn all that much, where if I don't hit my angle right on this, it'll definitely turn quite a bit and finish pretty far to the right. So super awesome disc. This is quickly rising in the ranks of my favorite discs of all time. So if you've never tried an Origin, definitely recommend. Now we're on to fairway drivers. I carry 4. My most overstable one is this RPM Discs Kiwi. Very rarely throwing this on backhands. Usually I'm throwing it on forehands. This is a disc that I can throw hard and flat. It is not going to turn, and it's going to fade really hard, really fast. If I'm looking for a skip shot, then this is what I'll throw. It definitely gets some ground play. This will skip even in grass. So if I need that shot, that skip, that's what I'll throw this for. It's pretty flat. It's not board flat, but it is pretty flat, so it does feel awesome in that forehand grip. And it's pretty deep compared to, well, it's not that deep. It's pretty comparable to other overstable fairways in the slot. I've never thrown a Champion Firebird, but I imagine that they fly pretty similar to this. So if you're looking for that super overstable forehand, or just overstable fairway disc in general, this is a good one to try if you want to try something new and experiment with some smaller manufacturers. So this is the Kiwi Atomic Plastic, made by RPM Discs. Super awesome disc. This is also my go-to Tomahawk disc. I don't throw a lot of Tomahawks, especially in Tucson, but it's overstable enough that this is definitely the disc I'm going to reach for all of my overhand shots. My slightly less overstable fairway driver is this Lucid X Getaway. This used to be bagged by my friend Joey Lucier, and then we traded getaways, and now I've got his old one. This is actually a disc I throw pretty equally backhand and forehand. So for backhand, when thrown flat, it's really not going to turn. It's going to hold straight for a pretty good ways and then have a nice fade kick in, usually about 275 feet for me. And this is also my go-to flex forehand disc. So if I want a forehand shot that turns but fights back, this is what I'm going to reach for. I'll put it on just a little bit of hyzer to make sure that when it turns, it will come back. I've seen recently that sometimes if I throw this flat, it will turn quite a bit. And even though it will fade a little bit at the end, it has turned so much that the net result is it's going to be to the left for me as a right-handed forehand thrower. So just that little bit of hyzer ensures that it doesn't turn too much, but it is going to turn some and then fade back. So flex forehand is one of my favorite shots that I use on the course, and this disc takes care of all that for me. My straight fairway driver, or slightly overstable, is this Discdroyer FD8 Stork. I bought this in hopes that it would fly kind of like a flatter run of Undertakers, which are just laser straight. And it's very hard to find a disc like that that is faster than a mid-range. And this, I think, is as close as I've really ever come. So for me, hard and flat on a backhand, it will typically turn just a little bit, but for the most part, it's just laser straight. Has a little bit of fade at the end, but not a ton. And is really just it is the furthest flying straight disc that I've ever owned. So super, super cool option. If you are looking for a Undertaker type disc that is just the longest straight flying disc that you can find, and you've got the arm speed for a disc like the Undertaker, I recommend trying this Stork because it might surprise you. And then my understable fairway driver is this Mantra. This is a disc, I'm not throwing this forehands. This is a disc that if I throw it, even with a little bit of hyzer, it's gonna just turn and never come back. So I don't throw a lot of rollers, but this would be my roller disc if I had to throw a roller. It's also my hyzer flip disc of choice. So if I've got a longer shot, 300 feet plus, and I need to kind of hyzer flip something around an obstacle, but then finish straight and get as much distance as I can, this is going to be the disc I'm reaching for. Super fun to throw. Definitely flippier than when I first got it. Out of the box, it's not that flippy. But I've had this one in the bag a while. And, it's a little beat up and a little flippier. So always nice to have a understable fairway for all those hyzer flip needs. Or also shots where I tend to prefer throwing forehands where I can, but if I have a shot that I need to move left to right that maybe requires a higher launch angle, that's typically hard to do with a forehand, at least for me. So I'll actually choose to throw this backhand and I'll get that left to right that I need. So super awesome understable fairway from Thought Space Athletics. And then we go to distance drivers. So my most overstable distance driver is this Lone Star Discs Bowie. I've only thrown this 3 times. All 3 times were today, actually. I threw it twice in the field and then once in a tournament round I played today. And it's pretty much exactly what I was looking for, which is a disc that is stable enough that I can throw flat on a max power forehand and know that it's going to get me a good amount of distance with minimal turn or no turn and pretty good fade. And so far it seems like this is just nailing that shot shape for me. So like I said, I've only thrown it 3 times. We're still learning it. I'm hoping this will become a longer tomahawk disc for me as well. Like I said, I don't throw a ton of overhand shots, but it would be nice to have a tomahawk disc that I can really learn with and get some more distance. Hoping this will be that for me. With this disc in particular, this is from Lone Star Discs and their Alpha plastic. And when I was reading reviews for this disc, one of the things that really sold me was people comparing it to Ultrium from Pro Discus and K1 plastic from Castaplast. And I've never thrown Ultrium, but K1 is some of my favorite plastic on the market. And I don't know yet how I would compare this to K1. So far, I can definitely see the comparison. It's definitely premium stuff while still also being a little gummy and grippy. So awesome plastic. So far, I would say definitely in the ranks of K1. So awesome stuff. Would definitely recommend trying. Similar stability, maybe just a touch less stable, is this Innovadiscs Destroyer in Star Plastic with the Nashville Disc Golf Store stamp. Originally, I just bought this because it had the Nashville Disc Golf Store stamp, and I thought it would be cool to bag a disc with that stamp. And I actually wasn't sure this was going to make the bag because typically Destroyers are very overstable. A little bit more than I would want to bag. But honestly, it's a little flatter as far as destroyers go, and it's actually not that overstable for me. So if I throw this flat on a backhand, full power, definitely not going to turn, but it is going to go straight for quite a while before that big fade kicks in. So throwing this probably 320 feet or so. But usually when I'm throwing this, it's on forehands. And I can throw this hard and flat on forehands, and it definitely will turn, but will also definitely fight back to center. So for flex forehands, where I just need as much distance as possible, this is probably the disc that I will be reaching for. So pleasantly surprised by how useful this destroyer has been for me. Slightly less stable than that destroyer, but still overstable, all things considered, is this Latitude 64 Royal Rive. This is a really, really impressive disc. I have never thrown another disc that is as far flying as this and as overstable as this. Typically, discs that fly as far as this does for me have to do it with a big S-shaped flight, whereas this thing gets me as much distance as a flippier disc that requires a full S flight, and it does it without really any turn at all, which is crazy. So it's quite a testament to how fast this disc is and how glidey it is. I've never seen another disc with that combination of overstability and glide ever. So this, I said the Bobcat might be my favorite mold of all time. The Bobcat and this are probably 1 and 2. I don't even know the order, to be honest, but in some order, those are probably my 2 favorite molds of all time. If you've never tried Arrive, definitely check it out. For backhands, this one is a little bit beat up, so sometimes when I throw it flat on backhands, full power, it turns like just the slightest amount of turn, and then that big fade kicks in at the end. Whereas for forehands, if I throw this as hard as I can flat on a forehand, it's going to turn quite a bit. So sometimes it'll turn and then kind of finish flat. Usually to get as much distance as I can out of this, I'll have to throw this on a pretty good amount of hyzer, and that'll allow me to get that full S flight out of it. I have thrown this on forehands up to 370 feet, so this is definitely my max distance forehand disc. And I was going to say that usually I'm throwing this on forehands, but actually I think it's closer to 50-50. There are definitely some holes out here in Tucson where I'm throwing that backhand and getting the distance that I need. And my last disc in the bag is also my second newest disc to the bag. I've only had this disc for about a week. This is the Infinite Discs Pharaoh in S-Blend plastic with the double I-Blend stamp. So the Pharaoh for me is the max distance backhand disc that I've been looking for. I've been looking for a disc that I can throw hard and flat on a backhand that's going to give me that S shape. So I know that it's going to turn, but I know that it's stable enough to fight back. And this is exactly that disc. Usually understable, fast discs are very touchy for me. So they're very sensitive to the release angle and speed and all the other variables that go into it. And this is really the first disc I found that that perfect S flight for me is just on that dead flat release. And so that makes this disc very reliable for me. Again, I've only had it about a week or so, so still learning it, but I've already got the confidence to I feel confident that when I reach for this, I know what angle I have to throw it on to get the flight that I need. So really, really awesome disc. If your max distance is right around that 330 to 360 foot range, I would recommend trying this disc, and I think it might get you closer to that 400 foot mark like it's doing for me. So that's all the discs in my bag. This is what I've got for the start of the 2022 season. And we'll see how different it looks when I talk to you guys next year in 2023. But for now, this is what I'm rocking, and this is definitely the bag that is giving me more confidence than I've ever had with any other bag in the past. So looking forward to jamming some tournaments this year with this bag, and we'll see what changes in 2023. Thanks, guys.